Have you ever thought about moving into a nursing home for yourself or a loved one? Maybe you're considering it as a safe option for care, but are you aware of what you might be giving up in the process? Moving into a nursing home can feel like the answer to many challenges, but there's more to it than just comfort and care. In this video, I'm going to share 6 deep regrets that I wish someone had told me before deciding to move in. These insights will change how you think about life in a nursing home and could help you avoid the same mistakes. By the end of this video, you'll learn why losing your independence is more profound than you think, why your health may decline faster than you expect, and how loneliness can creep up without warning. I'll also share how the loss of privacy and dignity can affect you in ways you never imagined, and why leaving a nursing home is harder than most people realize. If you're already considering this step for yourself or a loved one, these lessons could be exactly what you need to make an informed decision. Stay with me until the end, because some of these lessons might surprise you, and they could prevent you from making a life-changing mistake. Don't make the decision lightly. Watch this video before you take that step. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. Regret 1. Losing my independence. The most painful and disorienting shock after moving into a nursing home wasn't the cramped room, the regimented meal times, or even the unfamiliar faces of the staff and residents. No, the hardest thing to swallow was the overwhelming realization that I had lost control over my own life. It felt like I had been slowly erased, reduced to a shadow of who I once was, and it was far more devastating than I ever could have imagined. Before I entered the nursing home, I had my little rituals that made life feel like mine. I chose when to wake up, when to eat, and how to spend my precious moments. I could go for a walk whenever the urge struck, cook meals that brought me joy, or simply curl up in my favorite chair with a book to lose myself in another world. These little freedoms, things most people take for granted, were my connection to the life I had built. But the moment I stepped inside that place, I realized it wasn't mine anymore, not in any real sense. My life was no longer my own. There was no room for spontaneity or personal choice. The clock dictated everything. Breakfast was at a specific time, whether I felt hungry or not, and I had to eat it, just because it was time. The lights went out at exactly 9 p.m., no matter how alert or awake I was. And the idea of simply stepping outside for a breath of fresh air? It became a task, requiring permission, often waiting for a nurse or aide to be available to help me get out the door. The decisions that once were mine, what I ate, what I wore, where I went, had become luxuries, not rights. I remember the haunting clarity of my first week there. Waking up in a bed that didn't feel like home, sitting up and stretching in a place where the familiar warmth of my surroundings was completely absent. I reached for the book I had been reading before all of this happened, but my hand froze as I realized nothing around me was mine. My books, my comfy chair, the cozy blankets that had wrapped me in comfort for so many years, they were all gone. In their place, there were sterile walls and a bed I hadn't chosen, and a loneliness that settled deep in my bones. I had become a stranger in my own life, and the hardest part was knowing that there was no going back. What tore me apart was the heartbreaking truth. Once you surrender your independence, reclaiming it is nearly impossible. You learn to adapt, but it's not out of choice, it's survival. You stop questioning the choices they make for you. You stop fighting the system that's been imposed on you. You stop trying to hold on to the small pieces of yourself that remain. You eat what they tell you to eat, when they tell you to eat it. You stop asking if you can go outside because you know it won't happen on your terms. You start fitting yourself into their world, and over time, you lose the essence of who you are. And let me tell you, that loss? It's devastating. The gradual erosion of your sense of self is not easy to explain to anyone who hasn't experienced it. The silence that fills your mind when you realize how much of you is slipping away is deafening. You don't just lose the little freedoms that used to shape your day. You lose a part of your identity, your very soul. If you're considering a nursing home, I urge you to ask yourself, are you truly ready to give up the small, precious freedoms that make life feel like your own? Because once they're gone, the ache of missing them will follow you forever. And the truth is, you may never get them back. Not in the way you remember, not in a way that truly feels like you. Regret 2. Feeling forgotten. One of the most painful, gut-wrenching truths about moving into a nursing home is the crushing realization that the world outside keeps turning, moving forward without you. It's as if you're no longer a part of the rhythm of life, like a forgotten book on a dusty shelf. When I first arrived, my family reassured me over and over again, promising they would visit often. At the time, I truly believed them. How could I not? My daughter told me she would come by every week, and my grandchildren eagerly spoke about their weekend visits. At first, it felt like I was still connected to the world I once knew, to my old life, full of bustling days and laughter. But, oh, how quickly things change. As the weeks bled into months, those visits began to fade, and that connection slipped through my fingers like sand. My daughter, in her caring way, started calling instead of coming. It seemed like a small thing at first, just a change in the routine, but over time, I could feel the distance growing. My grandchildren, once so eager to spend time with me, were slowly swept away by the tide of their own lives. School, work, responsibilities I couldn't even imagine at my age. The holidays were the hardest, the ones that brought all of those promises of togetherness, of family, and love. They always said, "We'll come, don't worry." Yet somehow, each time, without fail, the plans would change at the last minute. My heart sank as I sat there in the common room, watching the other residents who, like me, couldn't shake the painful hope that maybe, just maybe, someone would remember them that day. But day after day, it was the same story. No one came. It wasn't that my family had stopped loving me. Not at all. But life has a way of pulling people in different directions, and the reality is that when you're not in front of them every single day, it's so easy for people to convince themselves that you're okay, that you've adjusted, that you're getting by just fine. But the truth? The longer you stay in a nursing home, the more it becomes a quiet, almost invisible kind of pain. The deeper the silence becomes, the more it grows, until it's not just the physical distance you feel, but the emotional gap too. The kind that comes from no longer being needed, from being forgotten. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. I remember one evening, sitting alone in my room, holding my phone, my heart aching in my chest. I debated long and hard whether I should call my son. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to remind him that I was here, waiting for him, waiting for the simple joy of his voice. I didn't want to be the one who interrupted his busy life. So, I put the phone down, my fingers trembling. And in that moment, I felt the weight of it all, the crushing truth. This was it. This was my life now, sitting alone, watching the days slip away like the fading embers of a once-burning fire. I sat, heart heavy, hoping someone would remember to come, to care. If you're considering moving into a nursing home, I urge you to ask yourself, are you truly prepared for the loneliness? Because, no matter how much your family loves you, once you're out of sight, it's all too easy for you to become out of mind. And that is the hardest truth to swallow, when you realize, with an aching heart, that you're no longer at the center of anyone's life, not even in their thoughts. Regret 3. Losing my sense of purpose. When I first moved into the nursing home, I honestly believed I was simply transitioning to a new place. I thought it would be no different from changing addresses, a shift in scenery. What I didn't understand, what I couldn't have possibly foreseen, was that I wasn't just altering where I lived. I was unknowingly stripping away the very reason I lived. The core purpose that once made every day feel like it mattered. Back at home, I had a rhythm, a routine that grounded me. Every day, I woke up with something to do, even if it was something as simple as making my coffee or feeding the dog. The small tasks, those little actions, were not insignificant. They were my anchors, my way of saying, I am needed, I have a purpose. And perhaps that was the beauty of it all, the deep satisfaction found in the mundane. Watering the plants, tidying up my space, arranging things the way I liked, it wasn't just about cleanliness. It was about control. It was about feeling connected to the world around me, to my life, and to the people who depended on me. But in the nursing home, it all vanished. The structure, the sense of responsibility, gone. Meals were served to me, cleaned up for me, my room maintained by someone else. Even the plants I had once nurtured with my own hands were no longer mine to care for. I could no longer tell myself that each little chore was a mark of my independence. In the beginning, I tried to convince myself that this was what I had been waiting for my whole life. No chores, no obligations. Just rest. Peace. I tried to relish the freedom, to embrace the lack of responsibility, but the truth gnawed at me. And after just a few weeks, it hit me like a wave, the deep, aching emptiness that came with having nothing to do. Nothing to care for. The days dragged on. They felt like endless periods, like a thick fog that enveloped everything. I saw it in the other residents, too. People who had once been so vibrant, so full of life, now seemed to be fading away, 1 minute at a time. There was George, 84 years old, a man who had built a life with his hands. A carpenter by trade, his garage had once been a sanctuary for him, full of projects, tools, and purpose. But here, there was nothing. No projects to dive into. No tools to craft something from scratch. Nothing to create. I could see the change in George. His hands, once so strong and capable, were now limp in his lap. His eyes, once bright with the pride of his work, were now dim, staring off into a space that offered no answers. One day he turned to me and said quietly, "I feel useless." And in that moment, my heart broke for him, because I felt the same way. I knew that emptiness all too well. When you lose the little things, the routines, the responsibilities, the acts of care and creation, the essence of who you are starts to slip away. The mind begins to slow, the body follows suit, and soon, you start to feel like just another nameless resident in a place where time keeps moving, but nothing ever really changes. You wake up each morning, but what's the point? You wait for the day to pass, just like everyone else around you. And before you know it, you've lost yourself in the stillness, in the waiting, in the void where your sense of purpose once lived. I didn't realize how much those small acts of daily life meant to me until they were gone. Now, I long for the simple joy of watering a plant, of folding my clothes, of doing something that makes me feel needed. I never imagined that, in losing my sense of purpose, I'd also lose a piece of my spirit. Regret 4. Declining health faster than expected. Before I made the difficult decision to move into a nursing home, I was doing relatively well for my age. I wasn't running marathons or anything, but I had a sense of independence that gave me pride. I could still take care of myself, go for walks, prepare my meals, and live without being overly reliant on others. I had my little routines that kept me active, grocery shopping on my own, stretching every morning to keep my body limber, and even just walking around my home, doing simple things like tidying up, which helped keep my legs strong. Then, everything changed the moment I stepped into the nursing home. At first, it felt like a break, a well-earned rest, they told me. Meals were brought to my room, and I didn't have to stand for hours in the kitchen preparing food anymore. If I needed anything, I could just press a button, and a kind staff member would be there to assist me. It seemed like the ideal way to ease the burdens of getting older. But what I didn't see coming what I couldn't foresee, was how quickly I would start to lose the very abilities I had worked so hard to maintain. The more I relied on others, the less I did for myself. Little by little, my muscles, which had once been so resilient, began to betray me. I stopped moving as much, and soon my legs felt heavier, stiffer. I used to walk without thinking twice about it, but now, every time I tried to stand up from a chair, it felt like lifting an anchor. The simple act of getting to my feet became a monumental task. It was as if my body had started to decay from the inside out. The muscles that had taken years of care to strengthen seemed to wither in mere months. And it wasn't just me. No, it wasn't just me. I watched it happen to others, too. People who had once walked proudly on their own 2 feet suddenly found themselves bound to wheelchairs. People who were fiercely independent and self-sufficient were now struggling with the simplest of tasks. Once vibrant and full of life, we all began to shrink, not just physically, but emotionally as well. The more help we were given, the more we seemed to need it, until independence became a distant memory. One person I will never forget was Alice, my neighbor. She was 81, and when she first arrived at the nursing home, she was a firecracker, still energetic, still determined to live life fully. She would take walks every day around the facility, telling anyone who would listen that age was just a number and she wouldn't let it slow her down. But, after a few months, I started noticing changes. At first, it was subtle. She walked a little less each day, then she used a walker, and eventually, she was confined to a wheelchair. I remember the day she looked at me with eyes full of sadness and said, "I don't know when it happened, but it feels like I've aged 10 years in just a few months." And in that moment, I understood exactly what she meant. It's not just the physical decline, it's the emotional toll that comes with it, the feeling of watching yourself become someone you never imagined. The harsh truth is that when you stop using your body, you start losing it, bit by bit. And in a nursing home, where everything is designed to make life easier, it's easy to forget that movement isn't just about convenience, it's about survival. It's about maintaining the strength to hold on to your independence for as long as possible. If I had known how quickly my health would deteriorate, I would have fought harder to keep moving, to stay active, even when the temptation to rest was so strong. I would have pushed myself, despite the aches and pains, because now I see how quickly everything can slip away. And so, I urge anyone considering a nursing home to ask themselves, will you still have the motivation to keep moving, to fight for your body, when everything around you is designed to make life as effortless as possible? Because once you slow down, once you let go, getting back up isn't as easy as it seems. It becomes a fight, and sometimes, you find yourself too tired to even try. Regret 5. The loss of privacy and dignity. One of the hardest things I had to confront after moving into a nursing home was the overwhelming sense of privacy I lost. It's something I didn't fully understand until it became a painful reality. At home, I had a sanctuary. My bedroom was my safe place, my haven, where I could retreat to when I needed silence or solitude. I had the luxury of doing things at my own pace, on my terms. But the moment I stepped into that facility, I realized how much of that independence and space I was going to lose. The absence of privacy became almost suffocating. From the moment I arrived, it felt like I was constantly being watched or monitored. Staff members were always coming in and out of my room, performing scheduled checks, or just moving around, going about their tasks, making sure everything was in order. Even the shared spaces made it impossible to have a moment of true solitude. Simple, personal moments that I once took for granted, like getting dressed or even using the bathroom, now felt like they had to be coordinated with others. I understand that the staff was simply doing their job, but that doesn't make it any easier to accept. It's incredibly humbling, and not in a good way, to realize that you have to ask for permission to do things you've done for yourself for decades. I'll never forget my first week there. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks when I had to wait for someone to assist me just to take a shower. Something as basic and private as that, a daily act I once did without thinking, suddenly required someone else's approval and help. And don't even get me started on using the restroom. Sometimes, pressing the call button meant waiting longer than I could bear, making a simple need feel like an impossible inconvenience. Meals were no different. At home, I could eat what I wanted, when I wanted. But here, you get what's on the menu for the day, whether you like it or not. There's no room for personal preference, no flexibility. And of course, not everyone gets the luxury of their private room. I had to share my space, and while I was lucky to have a kind and considerate roommate, I've heard stories from others who didn't fare so well. Some were stuck with loud roommates, others with those whose cognitive abilities made sleep an elusive dream, turning an already difficult situation into something far worse. You can try as hard as you want to make the space your own, to make it feel like home, but the truth is, it's never truly yours. You're just a guest in someone else's world, and it's hard to ever forget that. And then there's dignity. Oh, how difficult it is to come to terms with the loss of dignity in such a place. I don't think I fully realized just how much of mine I would have to surrender until I found myself in the midst of it. It's in the little things. The staff knocking on your door but not waiting for your response before barging in, the way they speak to you more like a patient than a person, the way your daily routine is dictated by a schedule you had no hand in creating. It's not just an inconvenience. It strips away a piece of who you are. You begin to feel like you're just another name on a list, just another number to be checked off. It's easy to lose yourself in that atmosphere, to become disconnected from the person you once were. If you've spent your entire life living independently, calling the shots, controlling your narrative, it's heartbreaking to see all that vanish in the blink of an eye. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. So, if you're considering a nursing home, I ask you, are you ready to give up the privacy, the control, and the dignity you've had all your life? Because once it's gone, it's incredibly hard, if not impossible, to get back. The loss isn't just physical. It's emotional and psychological, and it will stay with you long after the decision has been made. Regret 6. Realizing it's harder to leave than you think. When I first moved into the nursing home, I convinced myself it was only temporary. I told myself it was just a trial run, a brief stay to see how things went. I promised myself that if I didn't like it, I'd just pack up and leave. It seemed so simple at the time, like a quick escape route if things didn't work out. Little did I know how wrong I was about everything. In the beginning, it felt like I had control. If the place wasn't for me, I thought I could just go back home. But home wasn't what I remembered. My house, once filled with memories and warmth, sat abandoned, slowly fading away, empty of the life I once knew. Trying to take care of it from afar became an uphill battle. My children, bless them, had already started making changes I wasn't ready for. Selling off things they believed I wouldn't need, slowly stripping away the essence of the place that had once been my sanctuary. They even started talking about renting it out. When I mentioned returning, their faces clouded with hesitation. Are you sure you can manage on your own? Wouldn't it be safer here? We just want what's best for you. I could hear the genuine concern in their voices, but what I didn't hear was the understanding that I just wanted to be home. My own home. I wasn't sure if I could live alone anymore. I wasn't sure of anything. And then there was the physical decline. I had become weaker over the months, without realizing just how much I had lost. The convenience of living somewhere where I didn't have to cook, clean, or even walk long distances had come at the cost of my independence. I used to be strong. I used to be the one who managed everything on my own. Now, I barely had the energy to take a walk around the building, let alone manage a home by myself. I couldn't bear the thought of struggling to cook meals, clean, or climb stairs. The strength I once took for granted had slipped away, and with it, my confidence. I met others here who had experienced the same thing. We had all thought we would try it out, telling ourselves it was just a stopgap, a temporary solution. But for most of us, leaving wasn't as easy as we'd imagined. We were all caught in the same trap. The longer we stayed, the harder it became to even picture life outside the walls of the nursing home. It wasn't just the physical decline, it was the emotional weight of leaving everything behind, of realizing that you had been forgotten by the world you once belonged to. For some, leaving wasn't an option at all anymore. Their homes had been sold to cover the costs of their care, and with their savings drained, there was no way back. They couldn't return to the life they had worked so hard to build. There was no going back. And that realization, that is what makes it so hard. The fear of not being able to go home, not having a home to go back to, looms over you like a shadow. The choice to leave becomes an illusion. You're stuck, not by your own will, but by circumstances beyond your control. As we wrap up today's video, I hope you've gained some valuable insights into the unexpected challenges of transitioning into a nursing home and the difficult reality of leaving once you're settled. It's something many of us may never truly understand until we experience it ourselves. So, what have you learned so far? I'd love to hear from you. Take a moment to reflect on one thing you've learned from today's video, and share it with us in the comments below. What is something you will bring into your life from what we've discussed today? If you like this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us continue creating valuable videos for you. Thank you for watching, and take care.